Veronica Hayes was screaming at my 7-year-old daughter Emma through our fence when the first black SUV crashed through her front yard garden. "Get these government brats out of our neighborhood," she shrieked, hurling pool toys back over our fence, while federal agents in tactical gear surrounded her house. Agent Sarah Mitchell stepped out of the lead vehicle, badge raised, and announced words that made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Hayes, you're under arrest for systematic stalking and surveillance of federal employee families across 4 states. 4 states. Federal employee families." The way Agent Mitchell looked at me when she said those words suggested that our family wasn't just collateral damage in Veronica's breakdown. We were the primary target. Every neighborhood has someone who watches too closely. But what the FBI found in Veronica's house proved that some people aren't just nosy neighbors. If you've ever felt like someone was tracking your family's every move, drop a comment, because this story will make you check your own backyard for surveillance equipment. My name is Ryan Foster, and I work as an IT security specialist for a government contractor that handles cybersecurity for various federal agencies. Nothing too exciting on the surface. Mostly database protection and system maintenance. Though I can't discuss the specific details of what we actually secure. After my wife Lisa and I moved to Pinehurst Commons 3 years ago with our daughter Emma, I thought we'd found the perfect suburban sanctuary, where our biggest worry would be remembering soccer practice schedules and keeping up with homework routines. Lisa teaches 2nd grade at Pinehurst Elementary, which meant she knew every family in our neighborhood through their children's school connections. She'd always been the social bridge between our family and the community, organizing playdates and attending PTA meetings while I focused on work projects that required security clearances I couldn't discuss even with my wife. Looking back now, I should have paid more attention to Lisa's growing concerns about Veronica's excessive interest in our family's routines. She'd mentioned several times over the past 6 months that our neighbor seemed unusually invested in tracking our schedules, asking other parents about my work hours and travel patterns, with the persistence of someone conducting research rather than making casual conversation. Emma had been excited about her 7th birthday party for weeks, planning elaborate pool games and making sure we had enough floating toys for all her friends from school. Lisa had helped her create detailed invitation cards that included safety instructions and pool rules, though I'd noticed my wife seemed unusually thorough about security details and parent contact information, almost like she was preparing for something more serious than a typical birthday celebration. Veronica Hayes had introduced herself as the HOA vice president when we'd moved to Pinehurst Commons, immediately establishing herself as the self-appointed guardian of community standards. She carried herself with the authority of someone who'd found purpose in controlling others, always equipped with a clipboard, professional camera, and an encyclopedic knowledge of regulations that seemed to apply exclusively to families she'd decided didn't quite belong. From our first interaction, something about Veronica's attention felt calculating rather than neighborly. She would appear at strategic locations whenever Emma played outside, positioning herself with clear sightlines to our property while pretending to tend her garden or check her mailbox. When I'd installed a swing set in our backyard for Emma's 6th birthday, Veronica had materialized within hours carrying official-looking documents about permit requirements and liability concerns that I'd never encountered in any HOA handbook. But it was her knowledge of our personal information that had started to feel genuinely invasive. During one of her visits to discuss alleged violations in our lawn maintenance, Veronica had made pointed comments about my work schedule and Lisa's teaching obligations, referencing details about our routines that we'd never shared with anyone in the neighborhood. She'd mentioned specific times when our house was unoccupied and expressed concerns about families with irregular schedules creating security vulnerabilities for the entire community. What disturbed me most was how Veronica seemed to anticipate our activities before we'd made them public. She'd appear with her camera whenever we had family gatherings, positioned to document our guests and their vehicles with the systematic attention of someone maintaining surveillance records. When Lisa's parents visited from out of state, Veronica had somehow known their arrival time and license plate number, greeting them with questions about their government employment history that had left everyone uncomfortable. Emma, with the observational skills that children develop when adults around them are acting strangely, had started referring to Veronica as the camera lady after noticing the sophisticated photography equipment she used for what she claimed was a hobby, documenting neighborhood activities. "Daddy," Emma had told me just last week, "the camera lady has the big one today. The one that looks like the ones on television shows about spies." The comment had seemed like childhood imagination at the time, but Emma's description of professional surveillance equipment was remarkably accurate for a 7-year-old who'd learned about spy cameras from cartoon shows. Planning Emma's 7th birthday party should have been straightforward. 15 kids from her class, pool games supervised by both parents, and cake on our deck, overlooking the backyard where Emma had spent countless hours practicing swimming techniques that her school's PE teacher had praised as unusually advanced for her age. The party started at 2 p.m. on Saturday, perfectly timed for afternoon swimming when the sun would be brightest and the water temperature ideal for children's activities. Emma had been awake since dawn, helping Lisa arrange decorations and testing the sound system that would provide background music for the treasure hunt she'd designed with strategic thinking that reminded me of the logical problem-solving approaches I used in cybersecurity work. For the first hour, everything proceeded exactly as planned. Kids rotated between pool activities, bounce house adventures, and Emma's elaborate scavenger hunt that required teamwork and critical thinking skills that impressed all the attending parents. I was managing the barbecue while maintaining visual oversight of the pool area where Lisa coordinated swimming activities with natural leadership abilities that made other parents frequently ask if she'd worked in recreation management before becoming a teacher. That's when I noticed Veronica pacing behind her fence with agitated energy that seemed focused and purposeful rather than randomly neurotic. She was carrying her professional camera, a thick folder of documentation, and what appeared to be a radio or communication device that she spoke into periodically while gesturing toward our property with military-style precision. The intensity of her surveillance felt different today, more urgent and coordinated, like someone receiving instructions rather than independently deciding to monitor our family's activities. Every few minutes, she would stop pacing to take photographs of our guests, their vehicles, and specific areas of our property with systematic coverage that suggested professional training rather than casual documentation. Lisa noticed Veronica's behavior at the same time and moved closer to me with the concerned expression she used when discussing students who exhibited troubling behavioral changes. "Ryan, she's documenting everything today. License plates, guest faces, even Emma's friends. This isn't normal neighbor curiosity anymore." Before I could respond to Lisa's observation, Veronica's behavior escalated from surveillance to direct confrontation. She approached our fence carrying her documentation folder and a bullhorn that I was certain civilians weren't authorized to possess, positioning herself for maximum visibility and auditory impact during our daughter's birthday celebration. "Attention residents and guests at 847 Oakwood Drive Ave," Veronica announced through the bullhorn, her voice carrying across the entire neighborhood with uncomfortable authority. "This gathering represents a security risk to our community and violates multiple safety protocols designed to protect residential areas from government surveillance operations." The parents at Emma's party looked around with mixture of confusion and growing anger. These were elementary school teachers, small business owners, and healthcare workers who'd come to celebrate a 7-year-old's birthday, not participants in any kind of security threat that would require emergency protocols and federal oversight. "Mrs. Hayes," I called out, walking toward the fence while trying to maintain calm authority. "We're having a children's birthday party with proper supervision and safety measures. I'm not sure what security concerns you're referring to, but we're following all community guidelines." Veronica opened her folder and began reading from what was clearly a prepared statement filled with specific legal terminology and regulatory references. Unauthorized assembly of individuals connected to federal agencies, potential surveillance risks involving classified information access, and failure to report government employee family gatherings that could attract foreign intelligence attention. Each accusation was so precisely worded and technically detailed that it was obvious someone with extensive knowledge of federal security protocols had coached Veronica on the specific language and legal concepts she was using. This wasn't spontaneous neighbor paranoia. This was a carefully constructed intelligence operation designed to disrupt and document our family's activities. That's when Veronica crossed from harassment into criminal behavior. She picked up one of Emma's floating unicorns that had drifted near the fence and hurled it back into our pool with enough force to splash several children who immediately began crying at the sudden aggression from an adult they'd previously considered a harmless, if strange, neighbor. Government employees like your father. Veronica shouted directly at Emma, who was now hiding behind Lisa with tears streaming down her face. Bring security threats into family neighborhoods where real American children live and play safely. The sight of a grown woman directing political paranoia at my 7-year-old daughter triggered every protective instinct I possessed as a parent. But before I could respond to Veronica's attack on Emma, Lisa stepped forward with the calm authority she used for managing classroom disruptions and said something that revealed knowledge I didn't know she possessed. Mrs. Hayes, targeting a federal employee's family constitutes harassment under specific statutes that carry federal penalties. You're creating evidence of systematic stalking that will interest law enforcement agencies beyond local jurisdiction. The legal precision in Lisa's response surprised me almost as much as Veronica's accusations. My wife seemed unusually familiar with federal employee protection laws and jurisdiction issues that elementary school teachers wouldn't typically encounter in their professional training. That's when Agent Sarah Mitchell walked through our back gate and said something that made Veronica's face go white with terror. Mrs. Hayes, we've been monitoring your surveillance activities for 8 months as part of Operation Clearwater. You're under federal investigation for espionage. The word espionage hit our backyard like a detonated bomb, and I felt my understanding of our neighborhood situation shift from annoying HOA dispute to federal crime investigation involving systematic surveillance of government workers and their families. Agent Mitchell was a compact woman in her early 40s with steel gray eyes and the kind of calm professionalism that suggested extensive experience handling situations where suburban drama intersected with national security concerns. She approached Veronica with tactical awareness while other federal agents secured the perimeter around both our properties. Mrs. Hayes, Agent Mitchell continued, displaying her FBI credentials with practiced efficiency. You're under arrest for systematic surveillance and stalking of federal employee families across 4 states as part of a coordinated intelligence gathering operation targeting Department of Defense contractors and their dependents. 4 states. Coordinated intelligence operation. Department of Defense contractors. Every word Agent Mitchell spoke was revealing that our family's harassment by an obsessive neighbor was actually part of something much larger and more dangerous than any of us had realized. Veronica was staring at the FBI badge with the expression of someone watching their entire reality collapse in real time. Intelligence operation? I was protecting our community from security threats. Someone has to monitor government workers who might be compromised by foreign agents. Agent Mitchell was already coordinating with her team while maintaining professional control of Veronica's increasingly desperate attempts to justify months of systematic surveillance. Mrs. Hayes, the evidence we've recovered from your residence indicates sophisticated training and intelligence gathering techniques, professionnel surveillance équipement, and communication with handlers who are not affiliated with any legitimate American security organization. Handlers. Professionnel surveillance équipement. Foreign agents. The words Agent Mitchell used were painting a picture of espionage activities that went far beyond one paranoid neighbor's obsessive documentation of our family's routines. As federal agents began searching Veronica's house with the systematic efficiency of a planned operation, I realized that Emma's innocent comments about the camera lady had been documenting foreign intelligence surveillance of our family disguised as HOA enforcement and community security concerns. The birthday party that should have been Emma's perfect celebration had accidentally exposed a federal investigation that would change everything we thought we understood about our neighborhood, our safety, and the people who'd been watching our family with intentions far more dangerous than simple suburban paranoia. Agent Mitchell emerged from Veronica's house 20 minutes later, carrying a laptop computer and several external hard drives. Her expression grim with the kind of professional concern that suggested the evidence was worse than anyone had anticipated. Mr. Foster, we need to discuss your current work assignment and why your family has been specifically targeted for surveillance by what appears to be a foreign intelligence operation. Foreign intelligence operation. The words hung in the air like smoke as I tried to process how my routine IT security work could possibly attract international attention or justify the systematic surveillance Emma had been innocently documenting for months. Agent Mitchell, I said, my voice carrying the confusion of someone whose quiet suburban life had just intersected with federal law enforcement in ways I couldn't comprehend. I work on database security and system maintenance. Nothing classified or sensitive enough to warrant this level of attention. Agent Mitchell opened the laptop and turned the screen toward me, revealing files that made my stomach drop with recognition and terror. Detailed floor plans of our house. Emma's daily schedule, including school pickup times and after-school activities. Lisa's teaching schedule with classroom locations and parent conference appointments. And most disturbing of all, my work schedule with specific project assignments that were definitely not public information. Mr. Foster, Agent Mitchell said, scrolling through folders labeled with code names I'd never seen before. According to the intelligence we've recovered, you're not just working on routine database security. You're the lead systems analyst for Project Firewall, a classified cyber defense initiative designed to identify and prevent foreign interference in Department of Defense communication networks. Project Firewall. The classification level alone meant that knowledge of my involvement should have been limited to fewer than 20 people with the highest security clearances. Yet somehow Veronica had possessed detailed information about my work assignments, security protocols, and project timelines that even Lisa didn't know existed. The surveillance of your family, Agent Mitchell continued, was specifically designed to identify vulnerabilities that could be exploited to compromise your work on Project Firewall, Emma's school schedule, Lisa's classroom routines, your travel patterns. Even your weekend activities have all been documented with the precision of an intelligence operation planning either blackmail or elimination. Elimination. The word hit me like a physical blow as I realized that the harassment we'd attributed to an obsessive neighbor had actually been preparation for something far more dangerous than community dispute resolution. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, our neighbor from 3 houses down, who worked as a federal epidemiologist, approached our fence with her husband and 2 children, their faces showing the same mixture of confusion and growing fear that I was experiencing. Agent Mitchell, Veronica has been asking detailed questions about my CDC consulting work for months. She somehow knew about classified biodefense projects before I'd mentioned them to anyone in the neighborhood. Agent Mitchell nodded with the expression of someone confirming a pattern she'd been tracking for months. Dr. Walsh, you're also part of Project Firewall's extended network. Your biodefense consulting involves identifying biological threats that could be used in cyber warfare scenarios targeting defense infrastructure. The scope was becoming clear with horrifying precision. Veronica hadn't been randomly harassing federal employees. She'd been conducting coordinated surveillance of specific individuals whose work threatened foreign intelligence operations targeting American defense capabilities. Agent Mitchell's phone buzzed with an incoming message. and she read it with increasing concern before addressing both families. We've just discovered additional evidence that explains the timeline and urgency of this operation. Mr. Foster, your current phase of Project Firewall involves identifying domestic intelligence networks that have been infiltrating suburban communities to gather information on federal employees. The irony was staggering and terrifying. My work involved identifying exactly the type of operation that had been targeting my family, which meant the surveillance of Emma and Lisa had been designed to compromise my ability to detect and prevent the very threats I'd been hired to investigate. Veronica's handlers, Agent Mitchell explained, opening encrypted files on the laptop, have been operating under the assumption that personal pressure on your family would force you to either abandon Project Firewall or provide classified information to protect Emma and Lisa from escalating threats. Emma, who had been quietly listening while staying close to Lisa, suddenly spoke up with the clarity that children often bring to complex adult situations. Agent Mitchell, the camera lady asked me lots of questions about Daddy's computer room and whether he brings work files home. She said she was just being a good neighbor. But it felt like when teachers ask questions to see if you've been paying attention, Agent Mitchell knelt to Emma's level with professional gentleness. Emma, those questions were very important information for us. Can you remember any other things, Mrs. Hayes asked about your family? Emma nodded with the seriousness of a child who'd realized her observations were crucial to adult problem solving. She wanted to know about our bedtime routines, when Mommy and Daddy go to sleep, and whether we have alarms or security cameras. She said families with important jobs need to be extra careful about safety. The manipulation was breathtaking in its psychological sophistication. Veronica had been using child interrogation techniques disguised as neighborly concern to gather intelligence about our family's security vulnerabilities and daily patterns that could be exploited for either infiltration or elimination. Agent Mitchell was typing rapidly on her secure communication device while processing Emma's information. Command: we have confirmation of vulnerability assessment completion. The subject's security protocols, family routines, and residential access points have all been compromised. Recommend immediate transition to elimination protocols. Elimination protocols. Agent Mitchell was reading from intercepted communications between Veronica and her handlers, and the casual discussion of our family's murder was being conducted with the administrative efficiency of people planning a business meeting. Mrs. Hayes, Agent Mitchell said, approaching Veronica with the calm authority of someone prepared to offer a choice between cooperation and federal prosecution. We've recovered communications showing that your handlers have activated elimination protocols for the Foster and Walsh families. You're not just facing espionage charges anymore. You're facing accessory to planned murder. Veronica's psychological collapse was immediate and devastating. Murder? They told me I was gathering security information to protect American communities from foreign infiltration. They said federal employees living in suburban neighborhoods created vulnerabilities that hostile nations could exploit. The manipulation had been perfect in its exploitation of patriotic sentiment and community protection instincts. Veronica had genuinely believed she was preventing exactly what she was actually facilitating: foreign intelligence operations targeting American defense workers and their families. Agent Mitchell opened another folder on the laptop, revealing communications that exposed the true scope of the operation. Mrs. Hayes, you're designated as Moscow, Asset, 7 in a network of 47 suburban residents across 12 states who have been recruited to conduct similar surveillance of federal employees and their families. Moscow, Asset, 7, 47 suburban residents, 12 states. The revelation that our neighborhood drama was part of a coordinated foreign intelligence operation spanning half the country was almost too large to comprehend. The network, Agent Mitchell continued, has been systematically identifying federal employees working on cyber defense, biodefense, and counterintelligence projects, then gathering detailed intelligence on their family vulnerabilities for either coercion or elimination purposes. Doctor. Walsh was staring at the evidence with professional horror. Agent Mitchell. If they'd successfully compromised my family, they could have forced me to provide classified information about biological defense capabilities that would have crippled our ability to detect biological weapons threats. Agent Mitchell's phone buzzed again with what was obviously an emergency alert, and she answered it on speaker. Agent Mitchell. This is Command. We've just arrested Moscow Asset 1 through 6. The entire network is compromised, and they're activating emergency protocols. All family assets are now targets for elimination. Emergency protocols. All family assets targeted for elimination. The words meant that the foreign intelligence operation had been exposed and was now attempting damage control by murdering everyone who could provide evidence of their activities. Command. Agent Mitchell responded while coordinating tactical positions around our property. We need immediate evacuation of all targeted families in coordination with international partners. This is no longer a domestic surveillance case. This is active foreign intelligence elimination of American defense workers. Federal tactical teams began arriving in coordinated waves, establishing security perimeters around our neighborhood while evacuating federal employee families whose surveillance files had been discovered in Veronica's intelligence database. The birthday party that had started as Emma's celebration was now the command center for a counterintelligence operation protecting defense workers across multiple states. Veronica was cooperating with federal investigators, providing access codes and communication protocols that were enabling real-time coordination with international law enforcement agencies tracking similar networks in allied countries. Her breakdown from community protector to unwitting foreign asset to cooperative federal witness was happening with stunning psychological speed. Agent Mitchell, Veronica said through tears that carried genuine remorse and terror. They told me that federal employees were security risks who could be compromised by foreign agents. I thought I was preventing exactly what I was helping them accomplish. How many families have I helped them target? Agent Mitchell consulted her secure tablet, scrolling through intelligence reports that were painting a picture of systematic foreign infiltration designed to compromise American defense capabilities through personal pressure on key personnel and their families. Mrs. Hayes, your surveillance activities have contributed to intelligence gathering on 73 federal employee families across the southeastern United States. Tonight's elimination protocols target 23 families for immediate assassination, starting with high-priority assets like the Foster and Walsh families. 23 families. Immediate assassination. High-priority assets. The clinical language couldn't disguise that Emma, Lisa, and I were marked for murder by foreign intelligence operatives who had spent months planning our deaths with the same systematic attention they'd used for surveillance. Agent Mitchell showed us the final piece of evidence that explained the urgency and coordination of the federal response, a detailed assassination timeline with our family photos, scheduled for 9 p.m. during Emma's bedtime story, when our house would be most vulnerable and our defensive awareness at its lowest point. The elimination plan, Agent Mitchell explained, involved simultaneous attacks on all 23 families to prevent any survivors from providing intelligence about the surveillance network or the foreign handlers who had been recruiting and directing American citizens. Emma's bedtime routine, which we'd maintained consistently for years as part of her security and comfort, had been specifically targeted as the optimal time for our assassination. The foreign intelligence operation had studied our family with such precision that they knew exactly when we would be most vulnerable to attack. Lisa was holding Emma close to her chest, her hands shaking as she processed that our family's most intimate moments had been studied and weaponized by foreign intelligence operatives who understood our vulnerabilities better than we understood them ourselves. The bedtime stories. The nighttime routine we'd built to help Emma feel safe and secure after moving to this neighborhood had been transformed into an assassination timeline by people who had never met our daughter but were prepared to murder her for strategic advantage. Agent Mitchell, Lisa said, her voice carrying the protective fury of a mother who'd discovered her child was targeted for elimination. They've been watching Emma's bedroom window, timing her sleep schedule, planning to kill her during the one time of day when she feels most safe and protected. The violation of our family's privacy and security was complete and devastating. But Emma's next observation would prove that children often notice threats that adults miss. Mommy. The camera lady always watched our house extra carefully during story time. I thought she just liked listening to Daddy's funny voices. But Agent Mitchell's next revelation provided the resolution that would transform this terrifying discovery into a victory for American counterintelligence efforts. Mr. Foster, the reason we were able to prevent tonight's elimination protocols is because your work on Project Firewall had already identified suspicious activity patterns that led us to investigate Veronica's network 8 months ago. 8 months of federal surveillance had allowed law enforcement to track the entire foreign intelligence operation, identify all 47 domestic assets, and coordinate with international partners to dismantle similar networks targeting allied defense workers in Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia. The arrests happened with stunning coordination. 73 domestic assets across North America were taken into custody within 48 hours. 16 foreign intelligence operatives were captured during planned handler meetings, and surveillance equipment was seized from hundreds of suburban locations that had been compromised by foreign intelligence operations. Veronica's cooperation became crucial for identifying communication protocols, payment methods, and recruitment techniques that enabled federal prosecutors to build cases against foreign intelligence networks and protect other families from similar manipulation. 6 months later, Emma's 8th birthday was celebrated with full federal security coordination. Dr. Walsh continued her biodefense consulting with enhanced family protection protocols, and Veronica was serving a reduced sentence in exchange for her testimony in international court against foreign intelligence networks that had recruited American citizens for espionage activities. Our neighborhood had been transformed from a foreign intelligence surveillance operation into a model community for federal employee family protection, with enhanced security awareness training and community partnership programs designed to detect and prevent similar infiltration attempts. Emma, now 8, and completely adjusted to having federal protection services integrated into her daily routine, had become something of a local celebrity for her role in detecting and documenting foreign surveillance activities that federal agents had been tracking but unable to prove without civilian witness testimony. Veronica's final letter to our family, written from federal protective custody where she was helping identify other manipulation victims, captured the psychological complexity of her situation. To the Foster and Walsh families, I thought I was protecting our community from threats, but I was the threat. My testimony has helped federal agencies protect hundreds of families from foreign intelligence operations designed to compromise American defense capabilities. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure other Americans aren't manipulated into betraying their neighbors like I was. Sometimes the greatest threats to our communities come disguised as protection, and real security comes from neighbors looking out for each other, rather than neighbors spying on each other for foreign enemies. Ryan continues his cyber defense work with enhanced family security protocols, and Emma's observations about the camera lady are now used in federal training programs for detecting suburban surveillance operations. If this story made you think about who might be watching your neighborhood too closely, share it with someone who needs to understand that community protection means protecting each other from real threats, not creating threats where none exist.